standards that are required for beekeeping and working in your apiary. And Stefan was talking earlier about the difference of classical beekeeping and medicinal beekeeping, and that is really important. When we are talking about beehive air therapy, we need to think about not only the bees, but also the people that will inhale the air that comes out of the hive. So we need to make sure that the hive has the best quality that it can have. And that will be important not only for when you inhale the air just for yourself, but also when you inhale or you let someone else inhale the air. So that is really the important thing we want to look at. Let me go to the next slide. There we go. So standard requirements, what do you want to look at? I just summarized them here briefly, are the characteristics and the origins of your bee colonies, the resources you use, how you make sure everything is clean and tidy, the beeswax cycle that you use, what do you feed your bees, the Aurora treatment, and also how do you make sure you have the best quality within your apiary. And all that is really important for one purpose only, especially when you want to treat people with health conditions and you want to help them with respiratory tract conditions. It's to make sure that there are no undesirable or even harmful substances that could negatively influence the benefits of the therapy session. Okay, so I will go into a little bit more detail in each of the sections. So what does it mean when we're talking about the characteristics and origin of the bee colonies? Very simple principle is that you need a strong and healthy colony. So again, we are wanting to ensure that no harmful substances get into the hive. We need to make sure that you have the best hive available that you can use for therapy treatment. The possibility is also given to use artificial swarms, but these should have a weight of at least 2 kilos in bee mass, and they should be strong. They should have a strong and productive queen as well. The hive itself should have a brood box and a honey frame, a honey box on top, so super box on top of it. And that's really important that you get all the volatiles that we've been talking about in the morning, that the bees have enough space and that they can build as they would naturally do in their environment. If you have a colony that's weakened by swarming, you must replace that. So you want to make sure that the hive is in the best shape possible. And if you have a hive where the queen has just left with some of her worker bees, then you want to make sure that that queen is replaced and that the queen that you put in is young, productive, mated, and is ready to go, and the bees accepted that queen to the hive. In terms of beekeeping resources, you want to look at making sure that all the materials that you use are natural. And Stefan's been saying that throughout this morning in several presentations, and it is really important. So nothing foreign, no plastics, no styrofoam, no artificial materials. So we used to use styrofoam hives back in the day when we were not doing apitherapy. But when we got introduced to Stefan back in, I think it was 2001, and we learned about apitherapy and how you have to do beekeeping in a different way in order to use the products for helping, people and animals with health conditions. We had to make sure that everything is natural and really have that understanding is if I want to help myself, I have to have that healthy attitude and make sure that if I want to be healthy, I need to make sure my bees are healthy as well. Same goes for glues and paints that you use on your beehives. Make sure there's no harmful substances in there, that the colors are natural colors. There are some examples given. In terms of hygiene, that is super important when we're talking about beehive air therapy. Actually, beehive air at the moment, if you use any device that is on the market, you have to class it as wellness rather than therapy. Therapy is used in medicine or medical use. And only if you use a medical device are you allowed to do therapy. And you have to have a medical professional involved in the therapy. When we're now talking about therapy, think about the doctor practice or the hospital. It has to be really hygienic. The bees themselves want to make sure that their hive is really hygienic and clean, because let's say we have a couple of thousand bees in the hive. If there was, if they weren't clean and hygienic, then there could be an easy outbreak of a disease, and the colony would collapse. So it's in their interest that they make sure their hive is clean. So we, as beekeepers, need to make sure that when we're working with the bees, we apply the same principle, and ensuring that the materials we use and the way we're beekeeping is done as hygienic and in a disinfectant way as possible. Also important is the use of beeswax. That was mentioned this morning as well. So the ideal scenario is you need to use your own beeswax cycle. Beeswax has a really important role within the hive, and you don't want to get any contamination in your wax. And if you are going out to buy your beeswax, you need to make sure that the quality of beeswax you're getting is organically certified if you're using it for beehive air therapy. This is really important because the person will inhale what's in the hive. So you want to make sure that the bees have a really natural environment, but also the person that is inhaling the bees air has the most hygienic, most clean environment. So food graded would be ideal. You can use uncapped wax or drone honeycombs that you can turn into beeswax. And these are just some examples of how you can go about this. But the principle, as I said, is really clear. If you use your own beeswax, you know what you're using. If you buy some beeswax, then make sure you know where it's coming from. Feeding your bees is also an interesting topic. Here, we just want to say, when you have your last honey harvest done in the summer, then leave some sufficient honey in there for the bees in the winter. So not just feed them with sugar water. I would not recommend that. Use them with some organic food mixture, and make sure that at least 50% of the food reserve is left for the bees to use throughout the winter, just to give them, again, the most natural environment, as if they were just standing in the wild and no one would tend them, then they would eat their own honey, wouldn't they? It's their food at the end. Varroa treatment. So I will just briefly talk about the Varroa treatment. Obviously, it's very important that you keep your hives as free of Varroa as possible. And there are many solutions out there of how you can treat your bees. When you do beehive air therapy and you want to treat people that will inhale the air, you must not use any chemical solution in order to treat your bees. If you do, you can't use those hives for beehive air therapy for at least a month. Just bear that in mind. And given that the bee season isn't that long, we highly recommend not to do the chemical version. So chemical-free is the best solution, ideally, and you will learn that in our next presentation from Professor Wimmer, is a chemical-free beekeeping, and that is possible. And that just ensures that, again, it's the natural environment, and you can actually do beehive air from the very start when the season begins to the very end in October. And that's in Europe. When we're talking about other parts of the world, obviously, if you, for example, look at Australia at the moment, you have bee season already, where whereas our bees are still hibernating. So just adapt it to your beehive season. That's what I probably would say. Okay. In terms of apiary site certification, so if you want to do beehive air therapy professionally and want to get it accepted as a form of therapy by a by the medical society, as much certification and information that we can share, the better. They want to see that you're doing the best job that you can do. Certification to organic beekeeping standards is really a must. Making sure that you prevent any undesirable substances, pesticides, insecticides to get anywhere close to the hives. And we said that this morning. The environment plays a key role. Having bee-friendly flowers and plants around your therapy center is just the perfect spot. If you're close to a very industrial site, it's probably not the best spot to have a therapy center there to treat people. So just bear that in mind. And then in Germany, we have bio-organic regulations that if you really want to have an organic apiary, you can apply to it. They are very strict and stringent, as Germans as we are. And if you get to this certification, you know that you have a really high standard. It's a top standard of beekeeping for your apiary. Now, just to give you a quick run through in terms of what I mentioned earlier, in terms of beehive air therapy and beehive air wellness, for someone to do beehive air therapy, you need a therapy room, and that is regulated or said so in the EU medical law legislation, MDR, so medical device regulations. It says if someone inhales air actively, in this case in form of bee air, then you need to have a therapy room, and a device that you use needs to be a medical device. So you need to ensure that the person, which you don't know, has no direct access to the bees, because they could be allergic to bee venom and they don't even know it. So this is really very important. So this is probably how we started off, but it's not the way to do beehive air therapy as a medical treatment. If you're a beekeeper and you want to enjoy the air of your hive, or you just want to do a bit of wellness because it makes you feel good, all the other options are available, and it is fantastic what's out there. There are really some creative ideas that I've seen today, and it's fantastic, and I really want to see them live. If you want to do a medical treatment, this is really not the way to do it. We, through our certification process to get our device medically certified, we also have had a think about, okay, for that to work, we need to get a apitherapy center or a therapy center built that fulfills those criteria. And as my dad, who has invented the device, his main background is in the building industry. He ran several businesses and project management and architecture and all those fantastic things. He had, of course, first-hand ideas of how we can make this work in the best version. So this is an example of the therapy center, and we would be happy to share plans if you want to build those similar. We would be happy to share those plans with you if you're anywhere else in the world. If you're close to Germany, we can build that for you. We can help you with that. If you're further away, we can share the plans and you can get local builders to help you. This is an example of a therapy center at the outside. This is a spa resort in Bad Schlema in Saxony. It's a therapy center with 3 treatment spaces, so 6 hives in there. This is from the inside. So the person sits in front of the hive. The bees fly out. They have no access for the inside. They could connect it to the hive, and then they can enjoy their beehive air. This is, again, also from the inside. This is the storage cabinet because it stores the devices in there as well as individual patient boxes. Patient boxes are really important that each patient gets their own individual patient box. Um, the storage cabinet is constructed in a way that, again, it's safe that bees can't get stuck in it by mistake. So it's designed in a way that it's free of bees as well. Especially when you do your inspections, the windows open outwards so the bees can easily fly out. If you still have a few bees that just didn't want to go out when you're finished your inspection, you can use a little hand hoover them up and take them outside. That's just a little tip to make sure that the air is free. But part of the risk management, we had to ensure, and that's why it's a class 2A medical device, the risk is still there. There is always a possibility that someone can get stung. So you also need to have the first aid training for allergies and anaphylactic shock to make sure in case anything was to happen, the person that is managing the therapy center knows what to do and has the kit available. Again, bees flying out. So this is just the front view. And here's a view of our medical device. You get a specially made lids. These are made to measure for the individual hive sizes that are available on the market. It's got a metal grid on the bottom, so the bees can't go through. The lid is to lift, so the device fits perfectly on it. And then you've got a control unit. The control unit itself is a medical device. It gets used in, or the fan itself gets used in nighttime breathing ventilators in hospitals. And the unit itself is a in-house development of Beecura. So that and a couple of business partners work this out. Then you've got the individual patient box that each person will get from us or from the other therapy centers. That has a mask, a valve, and a heated hose. The valve has 2 openings. One to make sure that the person can't breathe back into the hose, so you don't have the risk of condensation or mold building, and the air then would flow out, and there's a lock, so the room air can't enter the hose. The hose itself is heated to ensure that the temperature that is in the hive stays consistent, and 100% of the air reaches the patient, because if you don't do that, then they've measured at the Technical University in Dresden that only 10% of the beehive air actually arrives at the patient. Not to say though, because there's many devices out there, even with 10%, we still find that there's great improvement. We hear from people around the world that using all sorts of different solutions, they having success. Imagine when you use a device that gives you the full potential, you get even faster or better results. So, there's nothing wrong with it's just a different way. And this is the device itself. To conclude this particular section, it's really important to have the highest standard for beekeeping when you do beekeeping for beehive air therapy or use the colonies for therapy. And the standards need to be based at least on organic beekeeping. So all the materials need to be in naturally. And this is for one purpose only. It's to make sure that the person or the animal, as we learned earlier, don't get any harmful substances that could negatively influence the benefits that they are trying to get from this beehive air. So now we have a medical device. We have several medical studies or science studies that have looked at what are the compounds in the beehive air. Now I think it's time to get to a point where we can say the person XYZ has this condition. We know that these components are in the beehive air. So therefore, this person can have beehive air with so many sessions and they will find a benefit with it. This is really where this next level needs to go. And I'm really excited about the future studies that Thiago and Eduard with the Canadian Apitherapy Center are planning. And I'm really excited because I want to see more of this happening. And again, same as Thiago said, I want that collaboration. I want all you professionals in science to really come together, look at the data that is already there, and also find new ways. Now that the world is our oyster, and tomorrow I will speak a bit more about the how to use it, how long to use it, when not to use it, what for to use it, what protocols to follow. This is all for tomorrow. So today is literally just what's the best way of beekeeping. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.